All right, guys. So what you're seeing on the computer screen right now is the Metrum's website. And under the maintenance tab, it's basically going to show you some of these other videos that we've already talked about. And there's a section called column. So this very first one's called the I column. And the I column video is basically just the same thing that we've already talked about. It's not actually even a video. I don't even know why they have it on here. But this is the computer chip that they're talking about that relays the information to your database system of your software and what controls the instrument altogether. This information, of course, that gets relayed are the dates and the times that samples are ran, the number of injections made on the column, the date that the column was installed. We've talked about all of the information before, so that's nothing new. I'm not going to elaborate on it here, but that's going to be their very first video of the column section that you're going to find on the Metrum website. The next one's the new column and the guard column. Okay, a new column / guard column. So this video is going to kind of walk you through the process. And what you're seeing this person hold here is a guard column. You can see the guard stamped on the tag right there. And they come capped. So those are the green caps that they are basically screwing off of the top and of the bottom. And this is a connector piece on the inside of the instrument. Some people will have, if they don't have a column installed on the piece of equipment, then they will take the column out, but you've got to keep the system closed. It helps prevent contamination. So that's what this joint is for. It's to connect what would be going to the top of the column and what would be going to the bottom of the column. It's going to connect those two pieces together, just so they stay connected. They're not open and just dangling in the machine and nothing can get up into the lines. So they're taking that connector piece off. And the next step is to take this guard column and install the guard column. So that's what you're seeing here in that step. So there's the connector off and the guard goes on. Remember, in the instrument, flow typically happens from the bottom of the column and it goes out the top of the column. That's the way that they're made. It's just like water reflux condensers that you're using in our laboratory, right? Water goes in from the bottom, it flows up, and then it goes out. You never want to turn it the other way. You want things to be pushed through. You don't want them to fall through, okay? So there's the guard column installation. And now what you're going to see on the screen is that they're going to hit the start button, and this is going to slightly increase the pressure up in the system. You've got a guard column on here. It's got to go through a little bit of stationary phase, maybe a little filter, and you're going to see some pressure build up. So they're just checking the flow rate. That's all that they're doing right now. They're just turning it on. They're seeing if mobile phase is pumping through the system, and it is. So this gives them a very good idea that they connected it the right way. So they're stopping the pump and they're watching that go down. Now, I will say that that software screen that you're seeing, that isn't the manual control options. You have to manually go in and tell the pump to turn on or pump to turn off. So whenever you see the manual tab, that's where those settings are going to be that you saw on the computer screen just a second ago. So now they're going to get the column. Again, it's capped on both ends, so they're taking the green caps off. Those are closed up. There is no hole through them, so those keep it, clean. No contamination can get in it. And this column is going to get screwed on top of the guard. Here's one of those options where you see no tubing is going to be connected. They start the pump back up, and they're going to see the pressure build up and up and up and up. This pressure probably, I think if I remember correctly, goes up to about 5. And that should be right? I mean, water's going through stationary phase. There's going to be a little bit of resistance, so it's not going to plummet to 0. And you see mobile phase dripping out of the other end. That's a very good sign. They stop it. It starts to plummet. No flow's coming. Pressure's getting lower and lower and lower. Then finally, they snap the column back onto the proper holder, and they attach the top tubing up here at the very top. So they're going to then turn on the system one more time just to make sure there's no leaks in the system, and you should see the pressure build up and you should see it stay constant. Okay, you need a constant pressure. So what you're going to see in the next one is them actually starting the hardware back up on the Metrum system. So this is going to be starting the pump back up. and you're going to wait for a little bit. Every time when you install a new column, you're going to let it run for, at least an equilibrium cycle. And what you're going to see is maybe some peaks that show up through here. These peaks can come from anything. There's going to be slight traces of anions or cations everywhere. So the purpose of not running a sample immediately is to go ahead and just flush all of those things out of the column, out of the guard, off of the tubing, off of the connectors that you might have contaminated on your own, and you do not want that to happen. All right. The next video series here is this RP2 guard filter change. So if you're using a guard column, a lot of times these things will come with filters as well, and this is just basically showing you how to change that filter up. Very similar to the inline filter that you saw in a previous video in another one that you watched of our lecture series. So they're going to unscrew these two pieces together. They're going to unscrew them apart, and then notice they have the green caps on the ends. But that's not really what their focus is here. So they're going to take these two pieces apart. This looks a little bit different than the inline filter because this is supposed to be a guard, right? So you're seeing them unscrew the top and off it comes off. And then you can see that kind of filter paper right there, that membrane filter. So that gets popped out of there. And then they're going to go back and they're going to yank out some of this stationary phase, really. That's part of that secondary membrane. And notice there's two pieces in here. One is going to be more stationary phase ridden, and that's the very first one they're going to put in. And this one's got to be kind of plunged down into that guard. So that's what you're seeing here. That tool is just going to basically shove that stationary phase. It's a little bit thicker than a filter, which is why that tool is required. And then they're going to go back and take the normal type of filter looking thing that you saw in the other one and place it on top. And then these two pieces just screw back together all over again. So you've got a new guard column now that you can put onto an IC system. Some people will just order a new guard column and it will just come pre-made, ready to go. Others will just order the filters and you just pop them out and change them out, and they're a little bit cheaper, a little more problematic, but they're a little bit cheaper for those that are watching that dollar. So either way, either one of those will work. So they're just tightening it back up. You got to tighten it up to make sure there's no leaks, right? So your mobile phase, you don't want it to leak out of that joint. So you got to make sure that it's tight enough to prevent all of that from happening. So there's a video showing you how to switch out some of the stationary phase in the guard column. I mean, that's something that you can do, and it's pretty easy to do. You saw them do it in less than 2 minutes there. The next video is going to show you about storing the column. So we talked about flushing the column out and then rinsing the column out. And that's not really what the purpose of this video is going to be. So what you're going to see here in this video is they're going to stop the machine, and that machine's pressure will begin to plummet. You want to wait until it gets closer to 0 before you do anything, just to prevent any problems from happening. And we're close now. So they're going to take the column off, and they're going to unscrew the top piece, and they're going to unscrew the bottom piece. And then they're going to cap off the column. So those same green caps that are completely solid, they're going to put the caps back on them so that column cannot get contaminated. Notice they've left the guard on it, and they're just capping the guard, which is perfectly fine. And then instead of laying these out in the open, they're going to take this adapter, and now they're going to screw those two pieces back together to keep those ends of that tubing clean. So there's a way to take the column off. Make sure you cap them. Make sure that you store them the way that your company wants you to store them. Whatever parameter that might be, it'll be in the SOP, hopefully. And that's a little bit about the column. All right, so that's where I'm going to stop. And in the next set of videos, we're going to move on. And we're finally going to move on to one of our last pieces. Not the last, but one of the last. And that's going to be our suppressor.